So yeah, we're talking about Socorro incident, UFO incident that happened in Texas, was it? Whereabouts was it going?
New Mexico.
New Mexico, that's right. So I'll just get it bigger. In 1964, so it was before I was born. But they found some interesting stuff here that might explain that particular case. Remember, it was before the moon landings, and they were using New Mexico as a test bed for test landers and all sorts of stuff like that, helicopters and whatnot. So it talks about here, what's that still popping down? My name is Ron. I was born in Socorro 2 months before the sighting. My mother worked at the First State Bank at the time and knew Polo Pineta and Lonnie Samora. Is that how you say that? Anyway, she heard firsthand the description shortly after Lonnie saw the UFO. He was so scared he went to the Catholic Church to confess and pray before he reported it to Polo, who then went to the bank the next day to talk to the people he knew there. Polo said the FBI told him not to talk to anyone. He was mad and said, "No one will tell me what I can do," including the FBI, obviously, and can't say in my town, and proceeded to tell those at the bank, including my mum, what happened. So Lonnie was pursuing a couple of teenagers leaving town and broke the chase. So he's the police cop, wasn't he? To investigate something he saw. He reported a silver craft, angular with spindly legs, and had markings like what Bowen put on their planes. And two in silvery suits who got into the craft and left. There was not a balloon-looking craft. It was not a balloon-looking craft. My mother and father went to, obviously it hasn't been fenced off or anything, so anyone could trample it. They saw, along with a bunch of locals, some depressions in the sand, like the pads of a medium-weight craft had set down. And I wonder if anyone took pictures of it. And a bush with some scorched mucks and possibly some kind of oily substance. Mum didn't touch it. So all these people go there and they don't take a picture. In summer of 1965, my mum saw a picture of the LEM, Lunar Exclusion Module in the Midland, Texas. Well, that's where I got Texas, where we were living at the time. Newspaper, and her first reaction was, "That's Loney's spacecraft." She read the article and discovered that was a picture of Apollo LEM on display, and I hope this helps. So that's quite interesting. So the story goes on a bit, which I probably won't read all that one out. But it's talking about there were 7 to 8 cars parked over to the other side and folks standing around looking. There wasn't a lot to see. There was one round indentation in the dust near where we were standing. I don't know how many total, about like what our tires were making. There was no indication into the hard packed ground, as some later stories said. I walked up to the little mesquite bush in the middle, and that was somewhat blackened. I didn't touch it, but it may have been burnt a little and might have had a bit of oil on it. So we stood around for a fair bit, then left to go home. So this other person went out there, obviously. So it still hasn't been sealed off. Just keep going down to the other bits. See where I can find it, where it talks about it. It goes on a bit. I'll post the link down the side in a minute. Reading over the account by Officer Samara, his original description seems to fit well with Bruno's account. It is the filling in of details where the mystery arises. For instance, when people went back and found 4 burnt spots, these become a configuration of thrusters from a vehicle, not the scorched remnants of multiple dynamite explosions. Also important is that this was not a hoax. Bruno and his friend were not trying to fool anyone. This is just a case of an observer trying to explain something they had not seen before. Over the years, I have told people this story as an example of how a very straightforward event can get blown out of control, out of proportion. I even sent it off to Unsolved Mysteries thinking they would be interested, but I never heard anything back from them. I guess I should have realized that the show was called Unsolved Mysteries, not Solved Mysteries. In any case, I figured that now that Loney Samora is gone somewhere, someone get this all on the record before Bruno kicks the bucket too. The English is a bit twisty there. I haven't talked with Bruno since 1980s, so I don't know if he's willing to come forward. But an organisation like yours is able to coax him out for the good of science. I have found Bruno LinkedIn page. So it goes on. So this is obviously one of the landers. Obviously, it doesn't look like a oval egg at the moment, but we keep on going. Different angle on Socorro UFO of 1964. The Socorro, New Mexico UFO landing of April 24th, 1964 has long occupied a prominent place in ufology lore. The case of New Mexico on the UFO map and was only overtaken by the Roswell incident when the legend emerged from obscurity and blossomed into the late 70s. This case is still highly regarded. Patrick Hugin, how do you say that name? Recently wrote about Socorro sighting in the anomalous. So it goes on a bit. We're just trying to find out more about the lander. So it's talking more about the event. There were numerous hypotheses, of course. Stanford thinks it's another case of extraterrestrial visitors and government cover-up. Phil Klass in UFOs explained makes the case that the whole thing was cooked up by the mayor to give Socorro some publicity. Incidentally, Klass argues that the unidentified tourists could not possibly have seen both the craft and police car. Yet another hypothesis is the physics. Students with a little too much extra time played a trick on the town. So none of that's true, of course. So we keep on going down. So yet another possibility candidate has emerged in recent years. About the time of the identification of the source of the Roswell incident to a Pacific program, New York University constant level balloon launches from Alan Gordo in the summer of 1947. One of the participants in the launches, blah blah, stayed in Socorro and taught atmospheric physics. So they're talking about those dummies they dropped from balloons there, I think, but I don't think it's anything to do with that. He visited the Socorro landing site in 1966 and thinks that Lonnie Zamora is sincere and that he really did see something. So I think he saw something too, reading this article now. But he obviously hadn't seen it before, and of course to them it's a UFO, not a man-made object. So, you know, space program was new. You know, they didn't have a museum with space parts on it. So down here, where is it? So it talks about it about it more. The Skyhook, that's what it was called, the Skyhook balloon program in Hollow Man Air Force Base. There were special tests being conducted at north end of White Sands Missile Range involving a helicopter used to carry a lunar surveyor around for some tests. A portion of the WSMR range log obtained by McAndrew appears below. So there you go, they've got a log, they've got obviously a security log of people. Apollo program, Apollo 12 astronauts paid a visit to Surveyor 3 almost 3 years after it had landed on the moon. So it goes down here. The timing isn't right for the UFO sighting. The range lock calls for a morning test, and the sightings occurred in the late afternoon. But then things don't always go according to plan, and many tests which have defied completion by morning have been known to somewhat get finished up in the afternoon. In fact, bombing runs scheduled for that part of the range might have delayed the tests. So that's quite interesting. There are many other tantalizing hints that might support that the surveyor explanation for Socorro. Surveyor tests were done with a small Bell helicopter that supported the craft from its inside. So they're talking about the lunar lander with the helicopter on top. The helicopter and spacecraft would have presented a bizarre profile. The surveyor's slanted legs fit Zamora's description well, and are also a match for the shape of the landing pod imprints found later. In Stanford 1976 book, he mentions Phil Klass' comment that the landing pads like surveyors were among the only practical shapes for that function. The spacecraft used Verne engines and altitude jets to probe and sample soil, which could explain the flames the policeman saw and the burn marks many saw on the trees and all that and the ground. The flames weren't being used for lift that was supplied by the helicopter. The burn marks at the site did not include sufficient thrust to lift a large vehicle, according to couldnt. Maybe they put some thrust on to help lift the platform up, maybe, or just to test the firing. The surveyor used a mechanical scoop with a shape that matches a rectangular trough photographed at Socorro site. So there's a lot of things ticking the boxes here. So Morrow described the craft as aluminium white, which certainly matched the bulk of the Bell helicopter. I'm not sure if you've seen those oval egg-shaped helicopters, but we'll have a look in a minute, I guess, see if we can find one. The test missions were manned by a helicopter pilot and a Hughes engineer, two persons in white overalls. So that was the description he gave, like two beings in white overalls. But he said they were small, but that doesn't mean they weren't small humans, of course, like 5 foot. Most people in Socorro and several of the investigators thought it was most likely a secret government experiment, and some Blue Book researchers even pinned it down as a tenet operation run by Heliman, the Air Force Base, the base for surveyors' flight tests. Of course, this new evidence is far from conclusive. A lot has happened since 1964, but I think it sort of fits pretty damn well, actually. So let's see if we can find the helicopter. So, have we got it? I'm surprised he didn't put the helicopter. 1964 helicopter. I wonder if we can find one.
Oh boy, I remember them. I was a little kid when they were around. I was afraid of them.
Oh, right.
I thought they were a giant dragonfly.
With idea to help. Had stopped about only a couple seconds. Object was like aluminum. It was whitish against the mesa background, but not chrome. Seemed like O in shape, and I at first glance took it to be overturned white car. Car appeared to be up on radiator or on trunk, this first glance. The only time I saw these two persons was when I had stopped, for possibly 2 seconds or so, to glance at the object.
So
I don't recall noting any.
How's a egg-shaped UFO at first looked like an upside-down car? He's saying it looks like a trunk or the radiator. So, yeah, unless it's like a Volkswagen, is that what he means there? I don't know. Because that's like a beetle, isn't it? Beagle, as they call it. Which is like a sort of like a short round car that is shaped like that and flat on the bottom. But yeah, it's kind of strange that he thought it was an upside down car, not a spaceship. So let's keep on reading it.
Any particular shape or possibly any hats or headgear. These persons appeared normal in shape, but possibly they were small adults or large kids. Then paid attention to road while drove towards scene. So,
again, he's saying they sound like normal adults, but small adults. So that mean that they're sort of 5 foot, 4 foot. But he's saying here, small adults or large kids. So that doesn't sound like 3 foot alien greys there. 3 to 4 foot alien greys. This sounds like maybe 5 foot, not 6 footers, but about normal size. 4.5, maybe 5 foot. Maybe that's what he means. Because again, we got nice specific measurements here, which is crucial to a UFO sighting, really. So this sort of stuff really annoys me, because I need some facts to put it against science, and we can just say they roughly look like normal adults but smaller. So what are you saying, they're Japanese or something like that? Kind of strange, but they could be like South Americans, because they're pretty short people as well. Who else is pretty short humans in this world? Asians? Filipinos? So yeah, can't discount the that they're just normal humans doing something, right? So misidentified. So let's just keep on listening.
Scene. Radioed to Sheriff's Office Socorro 2 to Socorro. Possible 10 to 44. Accident. I'll be 10 to 6. Busy. Out of the car. Checking the car down in the arroyo. Stopped car. Was still talking on radio. Started to get out. Mic fell down. Reached back to put up mic. Then replaced radio mic in slot. Got out of car and started to go down to where I knew the object car was. Hardly turned around from car when heard roar. Was not exactly a blast. Very loud roar at that close was real loud. Not like a jet knows what jets sound like. Started low frequency quickly. Then roar rose in frequency, higher tone, and in loudness from loud to very loud. At same time as roar saw flame. Flame was under the object. Object was starting to go straight up slowly up. Object slowly rose straight up. Flame was light blue and at bottom was sort of orange color from this angle. Saw the side of object, not end, as first noted. Difficult to describe flame. Thought from roar it might blow up. Flame might have come from underside of object, at middle, possibly a 4 feet area, very rough guess. Cannot describe flame further except blue and orange. No smoke, except dust in immediate area. As soon as saw flame and heard roar, turned.
So is he saying it's 4 foot wide there or 4 foot long? Again, be good to have a picture with dimensions drawn on. But it sounds like it's underneath, which sounds very human technology there, right? Totally anti-gravity that's got a flame underneath, right? So this is said to be one of the most famous UFO cases. And straight away it sounds more human-like than alien-like. 2 humanoids, normal size, slightly smaller. Flame underneath. Thought it was an upside-down car. So yeah, Hynek said the flame marks, scorch marks at that location seem too small to be a powerful enough rocket to lift up a car-sized object. So that was Hynek's quote from some of his notes that I've covered in previous live shows. So yeah, so what would create a small blue flame that lifts off slowly? Hynek reckons it doesn't sort of match up with science in that respect. Need a lot of big engines. Yeah, as you've seen, SpaceX makes a lot of steam, a lot of thrust that you have to be a certain distance away from it, and as you get the shockwave. So yeah, it doesn't sound like a conventional big rocket, so something else is more going on here at this stage. But what? And I'll cover that in a minute.
Turned away, ran away from object, but did turn head toward object. Bumped leg on car back fender area. Car facing southwest. Glasses fell to ground, left them there. Ran to north car between him and object. Object was oval in shape. It was smooth, no windows or doors. As roar started, it was still on or near ground. Noted red lettering of some type, see illustration. Insignia was about 2.5 high and about 2 wide, I guess. Was in middle of object, object still like aluminum white. After fell by car and glasses fell off, kept running to north, with car between me and object. Glanced back couple of times. Noted object to rise to about level of car, about 20 to 25 feet, guess took I guess about 6 seconds when object started to rise and I glanced back. I ran I guess about halfway to where I ducked down, about 50 feet from the car is where I ducked down, just over edge of hill. I guess I had run about 25 feet, when I glanced back, and saw the object level with the car, and it appeared about directly over the place where it rose from. I was still running and I jumped just over the hill. I stopped because I did not hear the roar. I was scared of the roar, and I had planned to continue running down the hill. I turned around toward the object and at same time put my head toward ground, covering my face with my arms. Being that there was no roar, I looked up, and I saw the object going away from me. It did not come any closer to me. It appeared to go in straight line, and at same height, possibly 10 to 15 feet from ground, and it cleared the dynamite shack by about 3 feet. Shack about 8 feet high. Object was traveling very fast.
So it
It
could have been a
seemed to
big
rise up
flame.
and take off immediately across country.
So if it was set dynamite shack on fire, it would have been a big boom, right? So it makes you see that the flame coming out this thing couldn't be anything like what we see with SpaceX or the space shuttle. Requires a lot of energy and thrust to be able to lift off stuff.
Country. I ran back to my car, and as I ran back, I kept an eye on the object. I picked up my glasses, I left the sunglasses on ground, got into the car, and radioed to Nep Lopez, radio operator, to look out of the window, to see if you could see an object. He asked, "What is it?" I answered, "It looks like a balloon." I don't know if he saw it. If Nep looked out of his window, which faces north, he couldn't have seen it. I did not tell him at the moment which window to look out of. As I was calling Nep, I could still see the object. The object seemed to lift up slowly, and to get small in the distance very fast. It seemed to just clear the Box Canyon, or 6 Mile Canyon mountain. It disappeared as it went over the mountain. It had no flame whatsoever as it was traveling over the ground, and no smoke or noise. Feeling in good health. Last drink 2 or 3 beers was over a month ago.
So they're saying it had no flame when it was up in the sky. So what's that? They turned the engine off, right? Which is interesting. Traveling over the ground. And no smoke or noise. So obviously it got turned off. But we don't know what distances away the object is now, where it sees no flame. But that's crucial. If you ever playing watch, sometimes you see lights coming, but you don't hear the engines of the plane, right? And you can start to work out distances from your house or where you are, if you're walking the streets, how far away the object is, because I'm always doing that. I'm always judging when will I hear the engine noise. And it's amazing how close the planes have to get before you actually hear, depending on the direction of the wind, of course. So this is an artist's rendering of his drawing. But remember, he only saw 2 feet, but obviously, as science knows, you can't have just 2 feet. So I suppose, would that be 50 feet away in that drawing, or less? And it's only showing one rocket engine. But maybe there was more on there. As you can see, there's not too much known. And of course there's the red symbol, even though it's the wrong colour here. But yeah, we got some drawing that he did somewhere here. Maybe just look online. Okay, so where's his original drawing? Here it is. He signed it. So that was in the Project Blue Book report. So there's the 2 legs. So obviously there had to be another one somewhere in the middle there, right? He saw this design in the middle of this oval shape white object. not a silver, but he said that it did have aluminum or aluminium, depending on what country you come from, how you say it, alloy, as well as white. So I think the legs were, what he saw, weren't white, but were aluminum or aluminium alloy. And the symbol is quite interesting. Now, back to the new witness information. Apparently after she heard his sheriff, his boss, tell the story about the incident, they decided to drive out there to the scene of the crime. Of course, you'd expect it to be taped off and no one allowed to walk around the scene until it was investigated with, plaster casts and stuff. But apparently when she arrived there, which I've got the full letter here in previous live shows, but I'm just summing it up here. She said that there were at least a dozen people walking around the crime scene where the UFO was, and I'm not sure if you've seen the terrain of Socorro, but it's kind of like small rocks with little bushes everywhere. It's in the desert, so it's not like a sandy white sands area, but it was actually a little rocky area. I'm not sure if I've got a picture of it. Okay, that's the first one. Okay, that's the one, I think. So this is the area where it happened. So this is 2008, and you can see it's very compact type grounds around there with little small rocks and shrubs everywhere. Obviously not the best high quality photograph because we can't zoom in and have a look at the rocks. But you can see there, it's not like the lunar surface, like where you got the loose sand that blow up with the thrusters. So he didn't see any of that, he just saw the blue flame with some orange. So they're saying there's one landing pad hole there. Impression of a pad. And there's going to be another one over here, which is a bit hard to see in that crappy photograph. And there's one there. So there's suggestion it's got 3 landing gear there, right? This is where the story gets a bit interesting. The woman was walking around and she saw the impressions too, like this guy here. And but she's noticed some oil on the bush. Fluid, like a liquid oil that you lubricate things with, which sounds very man-made stuff. Would aliens have oil or fluid, oil-like fluid, crude oil? Would they be using fossil fuel? So yeah. So that sort of brings us to the next part of the story. She years later goes to the museum where they got the surveyor, which was being tested by NASA in Socorro Museum. I wonder if we can bring it up. So I noticed there was a museum over this way on the map when we first brought it up, but let's see. She noticed the surveyor. Now there were 8 variations, I think it was, of the prototype, initial prototype. So there they go, they got it suspended on, looks like some cables, so people can walk underneath it, I guess. And this is actually the Surveyor 3 because it's got this tele expanding robot claw that they could control from command center to get a soil sample. But you can see it was solar panels on top. What's happened? Yeah, it's got some solar panels on top, and that's all we've got on that. So it opened up. Now you can see straight away the woman saw the 3 landing pads, and of course she walked the site at the time, and she said, "Oh my God, that's what the police officer saw." Because it was being tested at White Sands, I think it was. Let's find out. I think it's White Sands. There was arm on it. It wasn't till Surveyor 3, I think, the prototype for that, couple of the robot arm. So this was being developed, tested in 1964, but it wasn't landed onto the moon to 66, was it? 2 years later. Let's have a look. Surveyor 3 returned, obviously with the sample. Oh right, no. Like, they obviously got a sample, so how did they get the sample to Earth? Did it blast off a rocket? I suppose that's the way you do it normally. One deal action. So they launch it up into space with a normal rocket. And you can see that these rockets produce a very orange flame, not a blue flame. Now, obviously the lander has rockets on it to slow the descent down to the moon's surface, and wouldn't need such big motors on it. Surveyor 3 probably need to look at. Doesn't see much there, does it? Let's see on Surveyor 3, I think that was the more advanced one. It gives us more information. Okay, so Surveyor was the 3rd lander, and it touched down in 1967. First mission to carry a surface soil sample and scoop, but how did they get the sample back? So many questions, including television camera. But did they grab the soil sample? Doesn't say that there, does it? Okay. And they're all sort of clustered around the same location. So let's get some more pictures up of this thing. Surveyor 3 images. I think I got some stored as well. So where's the rocket engines on this? Not the best of pictures, is it? Black and white. And very small. I got some saved, so we might be able to zoom in. So let's do that. Alright, also we want to know who was building it for NASA at the time, because NASA contracts out stuff, right? Remember? So we need to find out who was building it. Control F. Building. Sure, it's beeping. No. What else can we say? Manufacturer. Manufacturer. Here we go. Is Hughes Aircraft, right? So it's Howard Hughes. So that's another interesting piece of information there. Howard Hughes Aircraft, it says. And we'll just bring up a picture of him. He was the one that sort of was a filmmaker and did daredevil stunts with planes in the sky. Also had a wee bit of OCD, where he didn't like to be around people, and he sort of peed in jars and collected his pee and sort of lived in the room. So he had some strange quirks, but He had lots of money. And of course he had warehouses all around America with his aircraft manufacturing business. So it makes sense that NASA would contract out to him to build stuff based on their plans, right? Now, he owned several businesses, like I said. He owned a company called Aircraft, one called Tall Corp, one was a movie. I'm not sure what the name of that one was. But the manufacture side of things was Tall Corp and Aircraft, who's Aircraft. Entertainment. Maybe can find out quickly. Chairman. Howard Hughes Corporation. Hughes Aircraft. Medical. Air West Airlines. And it doesn't have the Tall Corp on there. But there is Tall Corp as well. And it wasn't until I did the search on this to see, to come across his logo. So there you go, Tall Company. I don't know if it's got the design of his logo here. Horrible black and white pictures. Manufacture and operations of the company. Texas. 1908, so it's been around for a while. Drill bits. So it makes sense that they would manufacture some bits for the aircraft side of things, right? But it hasn't got a logo. Yeah, but instead of searching it, I've already got it saved. So this is where it was like a aha moment. So we got pictures of the surveyor here, and detail on the landing pad side of things. And Howard Hughes. So we know NASA was Apollo at that stage, right? And they've got an upside down V as well, which looks like they've got some circular arch and some horizontal lines here, which are flames from the rocket. So it made me think, was he seeing a Apollo NASA symbol on the side of the UFO that he was seeing? But also Howard Hughes has a very similar logo. Here it is here. I think that was it. Here we go. I'll just bring that up. So this is his Howard H. Tall Company. So what's that look like? It looks very similar with what he saw as well. Upside down V. It had a line underneath and a vertical line going up, but is it possible that he didn't see the rest of the design because there was a lot going on in that short time? And of course it is. So did he see a NASA logo, or did he see a Howard Hughes Tall Corporation symbol on this so-called UFO? So that makes me then think, why would they be experimenting with a egg-shaped rocket? And it turns out that they actually own, let's see, own one of these helicopters, which is very oval shaped and obviously painted white, but this one's painted grey, which doesn't have a normal rotor tail on it. And NASA had one, and also Howard Tall Company had one, or Aircraft had one. So you can see they've got sliding doors, which slide open on both sides, which would account for the bang sound before it took off. So could he have been seeing a helicopter like this, but it's got no flames on it? So a wee bit more research, I found out that they actually used a swing arm where they attached parts of the lunar modules on the side. Now this is where that series on TV where they go to CUFOS, or whatever it is, Center for UFO Study, And they got all those archives there which are not scanned in, so nobody can actually search it online that's not in America. They got to actually go and visit the centre and pull out from the library to read stuff, which is pretty bad. So what happens if the library burns down? All the information is lost, right? So it should all be digitally scanned. It should be publicly available. I don't know if it is, but it didn't come up my searches online on Google, so obviously it's through a paywall if it is. So yeah, so now we know that they hooked on the side of these helicopters the lunar landing modules, and one of them would have been the surveyor to transport it around. And so they also used the normal Bell type helicopters, which again could carry lesser loads and also was egg-shaped. But we actually got a picture of these helicopters that NASA used to record test flights of the lunar modules. And this is the one for the one that lands on the moon with the men, though. This is obviously a lot bigger than Surveyor 3. As you can see, there's one of the men here, test flying it. And you can see it's got tanks on it, and a big rocket engine down the middle here. Although we can't see it firing the rocket engines, right? There's no flame, but it's obviously floating, which is kind of interesting. And that's definitely flying some distance away, observing it. So is that a blue flame that we're just not seeing? Like a Bunsen burner? So there you go, you know. We've got some more pictures here of another helicopter. And guess what? It's that one that doesn't have a tail fin, but 2 rotor blades that go opposite direction. And there's the lunar module there, which apparently they attach on the side of the helicopter. There's the 2-bladed one flying. Now, there were some reports of eyewitnesses seeing a strange-shaped helicopter fly overhead in Socorro. And bingo, here it is. They said it was odd shape, oval. They didn't know what it was. Well, it looks like I actually did have a picture of it in the museum. But anyway, it doesn't matter. And of course, we got a picture of them going to take the camera off it, remember? So you can see that it's fairly small, and it could easily fit on the side of the helicopter, the Surveyor, compared to the big one, which is in the distance here. And of course they blast off from the lander itself. The lander is like the Surveyor, and then the top half blows off and flies upwards into orbit, and then they dock on with another module of the guy that's circling the moon, and then they fly back, fire off the engines, fly back to Earth, right? And it's all interesting stuff, right? There's on the moon with the robot arm, Surveyor 3. So there's the scoop thing, kind of like unfolds out, and it comes down, takes the scoop of soil. But what did they do? Did they just process it on the moon, send back results? I guess that's probably what they've done. I can't really see how they'd fire that off unless that's part of a rocket here. Take the soil sample here, you'd think it'd shoot it off in a rocket, but it looks like that could get in the way there. So maybe it was processed. Maybe they took the soil sample from there as well to see if it was accurate from the machine that was processing the results. Spectrograph, I guess. Okay, so here we go. Here's the simple going. Upside down V with a line in the middle, which would be like the letter T, and a line at the bottom, which we saw on the Tool Corporation, and we saw it was in a circle. We'll go back to it in a minute. There's a Pylos one. You see, could be that, but there's no line underneath. But if you go to the Howard Hugh one, so this is me splicing the image together, right? There's the Surveyor 3, and they wouldn't have the top half on. They would have just had the main, the feet, and also the thing, and they probably would have had the other half of it, which because it was going, with the solar panels, I mean, may be too close to the rotor, so they may have unbolted half of it and stored it in the cabin inside, and the rest of it they had on a robotic arm. Now, if the rotor blades were white and spinning around, he wouldn't see them if all this was white. Here's my representation using the letter A from Apollo program. Could that be what he saw from a distance? 50 feet away? It certainly looks like an upside down car, doesn't it? If you look at this here, from a distance it kind of does look like it could have been an upside down car, because you got the window here and a window here. That looks like, could be on the side even. So you've got to see it from his point of view. Was he mistaken identity here, right? There's only 172 of these type of helicopters manufactured ever, and NASA had one, and Howard Hughes Tool Company had one. Okay, so the next one I did with the image side by side. There it is there. But to me, it does look like it's sort of a really crazy looking helicopter. Now, if it was hovering, it wouldn't have actually landed on this. What they do is this would have been hovering, and it would have had a robot arm that sort of lowered the rest of this onto the ground to test suspension of the legs. And you can see here, there's the round tank of gas here, and here's the little engines. They're called Werner engines, and it had one at the base of all the legs, so there's 3 of them. You can see they're not very big, but if all those together fired off a flame, a blue flame, they may have only been firing off one of them, right? Kind of makes more sense. Probably the one in the middle there, right? They would have been testing one of the jet engines. You could say, why didn't they come forward? Why wasn't this found in the investigation? Well, maybe the pilots did it illegally, right? They're not going to own up to it. Maybe something happened. What I believe is that there will be some documentation on that day where Howard Hughes was transporting this to White Sands Air Force Base from a warehouse somewhere in Socorro. Now, other investigators could probably try and see if that's true. We'll see if he had a warehouse there somewhere where the helicopter had a certain range, and they worked out the fuel thing, and it could reach from Socorro City quite easily one way to the Air Force Base and have to refuel. But the mine site where the cops saw it come down was halfway. Alright, we saw on the map, which I've closed down now, that where he would have been in between the Air Force Base and the city. It would have been out in a remote mining site, and makes sense that before they travelled at the full distance, that they may have wanted to do a few tests to make sure it was working before they dropped it off for the Air Force to do, well, NASA people at the Air Force Base to do more testing. So yeah, you can see there it sort of looks like an upside down car from a distance. If the engine was firing here with the raw sound, it would disguise the sound of the chopper blades. The only way to do that would be to simulate it, I guess. Someone could do it, a TV show could do it. They could get one of these helicopters, and they could get the surveyor and maybe, or even a Werner engine, and just mount it on the side of the helicopter and fire it up and see how much noise it makes. So yeah, it's outside of my budget. Let's carry on. Okay, so here's the one with the egg shape and Howard Hughes tool thing. So there's the circle bit A. Or is that the canopy that he saw? And that kind of looks like the letter A there. That almost looks like upside down V, I guess, with a line in the middle. Well, could they have even modified Howard Hughes symbol here and merged it with Apollo symbol? So NASA slash Howard Hughes, which is another possibility. They've got very similar designs. So could you have seen this as a letter A, line in the middle, and a line at the bottom, but not actually see that they were actually, that was all connected. And maybe there was like a white background to it and a circle, like NASA, like that there. So maybe it had a pilo, NASA, and inside it may have had the rest of that, right? Which would be scaled down, smaller. And it would look like a V with a line underneath. And you may have seen that as a vertical, all this stuff here in the middle, as a vertical line going up. So it's a bit hard to know how the human brain works when they see something like that. Okay, so there's another picture of the other sort of helicopter they used, NASA, which is also egg-shaped. And they did also have robot arms on the side with balloon modules on the side. And there's that twin-bladed one. Obviously, I don't know if that's the NASA one or a Howard Hughes one, but they had one each. And obviously they used it in 1964. Now, you didn't hear that from Center of UFO Studies. He said it was the lunar module that people were claiming was at Socorro. No, we're talking about the surveyor, which is a really small version, which is smaller than the helicopter. And I've got it mounted on the side here. X-shaped, looks like an upside down car. And so we need to find out about the engines and the footprint size, right? So I think we've gone through all those images. What was that one? Oh, it's in the museum. So you can see it's got 3 feet. We know the spaceman was about here. So we can sort of give an idea that it's actually like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 spacemen in width. So what width is a spaceman suit? About 2 feet. 6 twos are 12 feet. So 12 feet between each of the pods, roughly. So going by that, and then we can actually go and find the blueprints and see if that's actually correct. And I did. So I started looking into the feet of the surveyor, how it was designed. And you can see they had various design concepts here, that it basically had some rods. It also had some expansion inside, but we can't see the expansion of these ones. So it had a minimum size it could go to, and it also could stretch out further. You can see the springs here. So it could compress, and it also could stretch, which is why it survived that crash landing. So let's just keep looking, and we've got some more breakdown of it here. So this part of it wouldn't have been on the helicopter, because they didn't need it, right? So they could be detached and put into the helicopter, and we only saw the rest of it here. Now, I noticed this one's got a big main retro rocket engine. Not sure what version that is, but that's got one big engine in the middle there, which kind of sounds like what he was seeing. Does it tell us what version this one is? Shock absorber, which is U. Yeah. What's that thing there? I. Antenna, I reckon. Omnidirection. Okay. It's a strange place to put it. But we keep on going. Here's a landing pad again. Shock absorber. Strange gauge. We've got a pivot point here. foot pad. And they did lots of tests as well. S stands for soil type. So they did it on various soil types with rocks, sand, to see the force, how deep it would go, and how the distance the legs would expand. And you can see here, I think this is extension, absorbs. You can see here that it absorbs different PSI, I think it is. Okay, let's just move on. And then I did another soil one. Same again. Also the same chart. Maybe I got 2 copies. Okay, what's this one? Displacement of the legs, right? So it's saying it could expand up to another 6 inches from default position. So I suppose if it's on a slight hill where it lands, it can account for keeping it sort of steady by expanding out the legs a wee bit from the shock absorbers, right? You can stretch the spring. And it talks about displacement going up to 8 inches here. And the PSI pressure being 21. I'll keep on going. Okay, this is spaceman. So was it 6 spaceman? 2 foot. I suppose it could easily be. So you can see here the final design. Can we see the rocket engines? You can see that the feet look quite sturdy, right? They look like tubing. There's a shock absorber here, and it flexes on hinges here. Sounds very similar to what he described as structural. We have got some more information. I'll read it out in a minute. What else we got? Okay, so this was some information I managed to find of the footprints. General area of footprints. So I'm not too sure what that means, whether it's talking about these here or a little bit in the middle, which makes no sense whatsoever, because on that photograph we saw before, there was 3 circles and 3 lines around the man. So like that, 1, 2, 3, but here we got 4 for some reason. So if the helicopter was hovering at the time and it sort of was lowering the arm down and it touched one of the pads on the ground first and then decided that it wasn't the right place and then moved it slightly over again, or twisted the helicopter around a bit. So this one here ended up being over here, and then they lowered it right down and started firing off the engines, or testing the robot arm or something like that, because there was meant to be scoop marks there as well. So they may have loaded down the gear to see if it actually touched down. And you can see here it reckons the distance between the burn mark here, which would be where the leg is, right? Because we've already seen the picture, had little Werner engines where the legs pivoted. And there's 10 feet here almost. It looks like he's got these little round marks here, like it's sort of scuffed different distances, which you'd expect with landing pads, right? You'd expect it to leave little scuff marks because it would come down uneven, even on a helicopter. So that could easily be another 3 inches, if that's what that diagram is suggesting there. So that would make it 10, maybe up to 13 inches, right? And hey, presto, the other landing pad where the scorch marks are, it's also got some squiggly bits here, is 13.5, is it? 13 and 2 bits, or whatever. It is 13 feet and 2 inches. So as we found out, the lunar module could expand by 6 inches, 8 inches. So let's just keep on going. So I found this diagram here. Oh, now where the engines are. Here's the Werner thrust chamber. You can see they're very small. Big as a hand, a couple of hands, I guess. Werner thrust chamber. There. Werner thrust chamber. Tank. So we've got tanks. Just trying to see where it goes to. It looks like it's going to here. Okay, tank. And the Werner engines here. Okay, so we've got 2 round tanks. And at the pivot, we've got a Werner engine. And we've got a Werner thrust tank here. So there's one. Where's the other one? Here and here. So another 2 tanks of gas. And here's one of these small engines. And I guess they got one here. Okay, Werner tank. But we can't see it, we've got some more equipment on top of it here. And there should be a Werner thrust chamber. Here it is here. So it's at the pivot points of each of the legs, and we've got a scale here. 60 inches, 0 to 60 inches. So I decided to modify that so we can put it on the drawing itself. So the edge of that, I suppose I should have done it on the edge of the pad, because it sort of made the pad, you know, how it sort of went out on that diagram at the crime scene with the squiggly lines. So it looks like the shock expander was expanding here. I still think it's the surveyor. Everything seems to fit. So we got 60 inches to there, then another 60 inches to there, and then we got another 20 inches there, plus we got to add on a few here. So that's middle. So it looks like another 10 there. So that's 70, 60, that's 130, plus 20, 150 inches. So what's that calculated? So let's plug it in. And this is how I do science investigations. So 150 times inches to feet. Because that diagram had feet, not inches, right? Hey, bingo. What did I say on the thing? So we're 12.5 feet, so we need to go back to that diagram. Let's just go around circles. So it's 12.5 feet from there to there, plus you could add on another 7.7 inches. So that's another almost a foot, isn't it? 12 inches, a foot, 8 inches. It's close to another foot. So it can expand from 12.5 to 13.5. So just keep that in mind. And go back to this one again. So 10, almost 10 feet, plus whatever that comes to there. So it's a wee bit squashed in, the smallest we'd expect. Should have been 12.5 feet. Could it be because it was an uneven ground, and it dug in? And here it's 13 and 2 inches, which sort of matches that ballpark between 12.5 to 13.5. Bingo. So that one's correct. This one's 11. Almost 12. 12 feet. So that's in the ballpark. 14, 15 feet's a wee bit too far. We estimated 13.5, and we got 14.5 going between there. So to me, these ones here look more correct. Mind you, it's talking about burn marks here. So we know that's at the pivot point of the thing. So what's it saying? That between the burn mark where the rocket engine was coming down was 10 feet to a pad mark. It's a bit hard to tell on this diagram, eh? I wish they'd do better investigation than this, you know. So that would make sense. Let's see. The engine fires and creates a burn mark. We know it goes up in the shape of a cone, so it's going to create a scorch mark that could be less than 12.5 feet to the pad. There, so they could fire it off one engine. They may have fired it off here and it didn't touch down properly, and they drifted over this direction here and rotated maybe and fired it off again. So between there and there is the landing pad, and there's the other landing pad. Doesn't say any scorch marks though. No scorch marks. But that 13 feet is in the ballpark of the other landing pads. Now let's see, if that's at the pivot point. Just trying to wrap my head around it. Whether we can draw it or not. There's a shame we haven't got a photograph. A photograph and then have the measurements actually on the photograph. Then we could overlay it, right? And we could figure it out a bit better. So why would it be 15.5 that direction to that pad there? Maybe it's these little squiggly lines don't seem to make any idea for me here. You can see this is why it's really hard to investigate stuff, especially old cases. So we got 19 feet from that scuff mark to there, but I think one of these was a touchdown, initial touchdown, but not full landing, and this is where the full landing happened. 13, 14, and 10 plus some. So it kind of fits the surveyor locations anyway. So, what's the chances that a alien craft come down and has almost the same dimensions as the surveyor? You see what I mean? Does sort of put some doubts on the whole thing. Sort of matching up, I think, and of course that new eyewitness case. Have we got any other stuff that we need to talk about on this? See, there's that one there. I wonder if we can overlay the surveyor on that image there, because they've got, at least it's a photograph, and you can see here it's on a slope, which is what I'm saying. Which way would the helicopter be? It would be... It would have to have been that side here, right? And the Werner engine would have been where this bush is here. And that bush there. And the other bush this side here. So you can see if they fired it, it would probably catch a bush on fire. But it's obviously not going to create any big hazard fire. A bush, like a wildfire. They could see it wouldn't last very long in that desert. So let's take that, and there, and there. There you go, look. And the other foot, which is on the other side, which is Dan Neeson's, we need it on this side. I think it lines up, right? So that man size, yeah. Need to make it a wee bit bigger again. I think that's kind of looking the right size for the man. There to there, almost, maybe a bit bigger. Where's the edges gone? There to there, comes down. There's the other foot. It needs to rotate slightly this way, but it's in the right location. Boom. And does that look like the right size for him? If it's slightly back further, I think it would be. He's a fairly big guy, that. He would be able to fit in the back of the helicopter. So to me, that's a match. If that was hovering, that lowered it down. The Werner engines there in the middle, there and there. Whether they were all foreign, I don't know, but one certainly was. Okay, we're sort of done with that now.